Marry my daughter. That's what the Apache chief said to the loneliest man in town. They all knew him, or at least they thought they did. Elias Crow, a man shaped more by silence than by words. He rode alone, ate alone, lived in a cabin so far from town even the wind seemed to forget it existed. People talked. They always do. They said he was strange, unlucky, a man who had been left too many times, a man no one ever chose. And maybe they were right, because Elias had stopped expecting anything from the world a long time ago. No family, no future, just work, and the quiet weight of days that all felt the same. Until that morning. The canyon opened before him, red stone rising like walls carved by something older than memory. And standing there, Chief Ironhawk, still, unmoving, as if the earth itself had chosen to take human form. Elias slowed his horse. Something wasn't right. Men like Ironhawk didn't wait in silence for no reason. The air felt heavy, like a storm that hadn't decided whether to break or pass. Then the chief stepped forward, no weapon raised, no anger in his eyes, only something deeper, something deliberate. "I have a question for you, Elias Crow." His voice was calm, too calm, the kind of calm that makes a man brace without knowing why. Elias said nothing, just nodded once. And then it came. "Will you marry my daughter?" The canyon went silent. No wind, no sound. Just those words, hanging in the air like something that didn't belong there. Elias blinked. Once, twice, certain he had heard it wrong. But he hadn't, because the chief didn't repeat himself. He didn't need to. Elias felt something twist inside his chest. Not excitement, not pride. Something colder. Doubt. Why him? Out of every man in these lands, why choose the one no one else ever did? And then he saw her. She stepped from behind her father, quiet as the river at dawn. Ayana. Her presence didn't demand attention, but it held it anyway. Dark eyes, steady, watching him, not with fear, but with something harder to understand. Strength, wrapped in silence, like someone who had already faced storms and survived them alone. Elias looked away first, because something about her made him feel seen, and men like him weren't used to that. He swallowed. His hands, rough, scarred, uncertain, tightened slightly at his sides. He could build fences, break horses, survive winter alone. But this was different. Because this wasn't a task. It was a life. And he had never been trusted with one before. His voice finally came, low, uncertain. Why me? Chief Ironhawk studied him, not like a stranger, not like an enemy, but like a man, searching for truth beneath the surface. And in that moment, Elias realized something. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't desperation. This was a choice. And somehow, for the first time in his life, he was the one being chosen. The words stayed with him, even after the silence broke. Why me? Elias didn't realize he had spoken out loud until the sound of his own voice echoed faintly against the canyon walls. Chief Ironhawk didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stepped aside, and for the first time, Elias understood. This wasn't a decision that belonged to the chief. Ayanna moved forward, not quickly, not nervously, but with the quiet certainty of someone who had already made peace with difficult truths. "Walk with me." Her voice was soft, but it carried. Elias hesitated, only for a moment. Then he nodded and followed. They walked down toward the river, where the canyon opened and the air felt easier to breathe. For a while, neither of them spoke. Just footsteps, matching without trying. Two strangers moving in the same direction. "I know what they say about you." Her voice broke the silence, but gently. Elias let out a quiet breath. Of course she did. Everyone did. "That you're a man who loses everything. That nothing stays. That no one ever chooses you." Each word landed, not like a wound, but like something he had already accepted as truth. "I didn't ask for this," Elias said quietly. "I wouldn't choose me either." Ayanna stopped walking. He almost didn't notice until he took one step too far and had to turn back. She was watching him now, not with pity, not with doubt, but with something steadier. "My father didn't ask because I am weak." Her voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. "He asked because the world is changing. Men are becoming desperate. Hungry men, angry men, the kind who see hardship and take what they want." Elias frowned slightly. "So he's trying to protect you?" "Yes, but not in the way you think." She stepped closer to the water, looking at her reflection, as if searching for something within it. "I've been promised before." The words were quiet, but they carried weight. "He left." "Because he thought he wasn't enough." Elias felt that, not as a story, but as something painfully familiar. He looked down at his hands. Rough, scarred, marked by years of holding on to things that never stayed. "I don't want to be that man again," he said. "I don't want to be another mistake in your life." Ayanna shook her head, just once. "I'm not looking for a man who won't fail. I'm looking for a man who stays." The words settled between them, simple but unshakable. Elias looked at her again, really looked this time, and for the first time, he didn't see someone fragile. He saw someone who had already endured more than most, someone who wasn't asking to be saved, just not to be abandoned. Something shifted inside him, not loudly, not all at once, but enough. "If I say yes," his voice was quieter now, "everything changes." Ayanna met his gaze. "It already has." And in that moment, Elias realized something he hadn't felt in years. This wasn't about being worthy. This wasn't about proving anything. This was about choosing to stay. And for the first time, that didn't feel like a burden. It felt like a chance. They stood there, by the river, with the wind moving softly between them, and a choice that refused to stay quiet. Elias closed his eyes, just for a second, not to escape, but to listen to something deeper than fear. All his life, he had walked away first, before people could leave him, before hope could betray him. It was easier that way. cleaner, safer. But this was different, because for the first time, someone wasn't asking him to be perfect, only to stay. Elias opened his eyes, and the answer was already there. All right. His voice was quiet, but it didn't shake. I won't run. Ayanna didn't smile immediately. She just studied him, as if measuring something invisible, something deeper than words. Then she nodded, not as a question, but as acceptance. Together, they turned back toward the canyon, toward the man who had asked the question that changed everything. Chief Ironhawk was waiting, exactly where they left him, still as stone, watching, as if time itself had paused for their answer. Elias felt it again, that pressure, that weight, not of fear, but of being seen. They stopped in front of the chief. Silence stretched, heavy, deliberate. Have you decided? The chief's voice was calm, but there was something beneath it, not demand, expectation. Elias glanced once at Ayanna. She didn't nod, didn't push, didn't speak. She simply stood beside him. And somehow, that made it easier. Yes. The word came simple, clear, final. I'll marry her. The canyon held the words, carried them, let them settle, as if even the earth needed time to accept what had just happened. Chief Ironhawk didn't react immediately. His gaze remained fixed on Elias, sharp, searching, ancient. Why? Just one word, but it struck harder than anything before it. Elias didn't look away this time, not from the chief, not from himself. Because I know what it feels like to be left. And I won't do that to her. Silence followed, but it wasn't empty. It was testing, weighing truth against fear. Then slowly, very slowly, Chief Ironhawk stepped closer, close enough to see the man behind the scars. Words are easy, he said. Staying is not. Elias nodded once. I know. And that was enough. The chief turned, lifting his hand slightly, a signal, not loud, but absolute. From the edges of the canyon, figures began to appear, men, women, children, watching, waiting. Elias's breath caught. He hadn't realized. This had never been a private question. It was a trial, a judgment, a crossing. Chief Ironhawk raised his voice, not shouting, but strong enough for all to hear. This man chooses to stay. Murmurs moved through the people, low, uncertain, curious. The chief turned back to Elias, his expression no longer cold, but not yet warm. Then you will learn what that means. Beside him, Ayanna finally exhaled, a breath she had been holding, longer than he realized. And Elias, for the first time in years, did not feel like a man being judged, or a man being tested, but a man who had chosen and been accepted. Not because he was perfect, but because he stayed. That evening, the canyon no longer felt like a place of tension. It felt alive. Flames rose in small circles, casting warm light across faces, across stories, across a man who was no longer standing alone. Elias stood at the edge of it all, unsure where to place himself, until he felt it, a presence beside him. Ayanna. Quiet, steady, as if she had always been meant to stand there. "You're part of this now," she said softly, not asking, not testing, just stating truth. Elias swallowed. Part of this. He had never heard those words without doubt attached to them, until now. The people gathered in a circle, wide, intentional, leaving space in the center, a space waiting for something to begin. Chief Ironhawk stepped forward. His presence silenced the murmurs, not with force, but with gravity. He carried a braided cord in his hands, woven from threads of red, blue, and white, each strand deliberate. "Come forward," his voice echoed gently through the canyon. Elias hesitated, just for a breath, then stepped into the circle. Ayanna followed, not behind him, beside him. They stood facing each other, close enough to feel the warmth of shared breath. Elias noticed the small things, the way her hands trembled, just slightly, the way her eyes held strength, and something softer beneath it, something real. The chief raised the cord and gently wrapped it around their joined hands. The threads tightened, binding them, not as chains, but as a promise. A bowl of river water was brought forward, clear, cold, reflecting the firelight like liquid gold. Chief Ironhawk dipped his hands, then poured the water slowly over theirs. "Two paths," he began, "become one. Two lives walk together, not because they are whole, but because, together, they choose to be." Elias felt the water run over his skin, cool, grounding, real. For years, he had felt like something broken, something unfinished, something not meant to last. But now, standing there, with her hands in his, that feeling was slipping away. Chief Ironhawk turned to him. "Will you stay when it is hard?" Elias didn't hesitate. Yes. To stand beside her, not above, not behind. Yes. To choose her, again and again, even when fear returns. Elias's voice lowered, but grew stronger. "I will." The chief turned to Ayanna. Her gaze never left Elias. "Will you walk with him, through doubt, through storm, through silence?" "I will." Her voice was calm, certain. "Then before all who stand here, and before those who came before us, you are no longer two paths. You are one." A sound moved through the people, not loud, but deep. Approval, acceptance. Hands touched their shoulders, voices rose, smiles spread like firelight. Elias exhaled, a breath he didn't realize he had been holding for years. Later, when the fire had burned lower, and the night wrapped itself around the canyon, he found himself sitting beside her again. No ceremony, no eyes watching, just quiet. Ayanna traced small patterns in the dust, thoughtful, almost shy now. "You didn't run," she said softly, a hint of wonder in her voice. Elias let out a quiet breath. "I almost did." She looked up at him, and for the first time there was no distance in her eyes. "Why didn't you?" Elias thought about it, about fear, about the past, about every reason he had to walk away. Then he looked at her, and the answer felt simple, clear, true. Because you didn't ask me to be someone else. You just asked me to stay. Ayana's breath caught, just slightly. Then she smiled, not wide, not loud, but real. And that was enough. That night, under a sky filled with quiet stars, two people who had almost given up did something rare. They chose to begin. Morning came quietly, not with noise, but with change. Elias woke before the others, out of habit, out of years spent surviving, not belonging. But something felt different. Not lighter, not easier, just different. He stepped outside. The camp still wrapped in early silence. Smoke curled slowly into the pale sky. And for the first time, he didn't feel like an outsider walking through someone else's world. He felt present. But peace doesn't last long for men who choose to stay. A voice broke the quiet, sharp, unfamiliar. You. Elias turned. A man stood at the edge of the camp, broad shoulders, hard eyes, the kind of man who measured worth before offering respect. I heard what happened. The man stepped closer. You marry into this tribe, overnight, and we're supposed to trust you? Murmurs began to gather, people watching now. Not hostile, but uncertain. Elias felt it again, that old weight, the one that whispered, "You don't belong." It would have been easy to step back, to avoid it, to let someone else speak for him. But he didn't. I don't expect trust, he said calmly. I'll earn it. The man scoffed. Words. That's all men like you ever have. Before Elias could answer, another voice cut through the air, firm, unshaken. That's enough. Ayana stepped forward, not behind him, not hidden, but beside him. He stayed, she said simply, when others left. Her eyes locked with the man's, and he will stay again. The man hesitated, just a fraction, but enough, because in that moment, this was no longer about Elias proving himself. It was about who stood with him. Chief Ironhawk stepped forward. Silence followed instantly. This man has made his choice, the chief said, and now he will live it. No more questions, no more doubts spoken aloud. Only time would decide the rest. The crowd slowly dispersed, but something had changed. Not full trust, not yet, but the beginning of it. Later, by the river again, Elias sat beside Ayana, the same place, but not the same man. You didn't have to do that, he said quietly. She looked at the water, then back at him. Yes, I did. Because this isn't just your choice anymore. It's ours. Elias let that sink in. Ours. A word he had never trusted until now. I'm not going anywhere, he said. Not loudly, not to prove anything. Just truth. Ayana smiled slightly, then rested her hand over his. No hesitation this time, no fear, and that simple touch said more than any promise ever could. And maybe that's how it always begins, not with certainty, not with perfection, but with two people standing in a place they're not ready for, choosing not to walk away. Because life doesn't ask if you're prepared. It only asks if you're willing. So if you ever find yourself at the edge of something unfamiliar, something that feels too big, too fragile, too real, remember this. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need to be unbroken. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to stay.